Hey guys, it's Monday and it's September, which means that it's Day by Day Expressions Day, where what we're talking about is taking that personal quiet time, personal time with the Lord. How does that affect our everyday life out there in the world in what we do? And this month we have two special guests with us. We have Drew Klein and we have his daughter Daisy Klein with us to kind of talk about what's going on in their world and how they take this expression of their walk with the Lord into their everyday life. And particularly Drew and Daisy, I want to talk about music and songwriting that both of you guys, Drew, you've been involved in this for I don't know how long, and Daisy, you're just now kind of letting the world know that this is an interest for you as well. So Drew, take us back. We grew up together. Take us back to when you realized that that you had this passion, this desire to be involved in music and in artistry and in songwriting, and then to use that for the Lord. When did all that kind of coalesce for you?
Well, first of all, I got to say this is just so cool for me to be on a program like this to talk with about these ideas and my past and just what God has done in us with my baby girl. So that's pretty awesome. So I'm pretty excited about that. For me, I was trying to think about that as you were asking it. For me, I started taking piano and learning, theory and some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I stopped taking piano and came back to it just with my ear. So I started finding chords, not based on music, but based on what I was hearing and how it made me feel. Mm. And it was from some of that process, I think, that I began to go, what if I put this here and that there? And that began to stir, inspiration for what I'm saying some things.
Yeah.
And of course, it all went along with me, with my relationship with Jesus. So as I knew him more, as I was learning things in the Word. I mean, my first solo project was called Real Life. Mm-hmm. And the whole concept was this is not just some historical figure. This is not just some, fantasy. This was real life. Yeah. And that was such a mind-blowing concept to me that I began to put those lyrics and those ideas to some music that I was producing. Yeah. And that's, some of those things kind of where it began, and then guitar and stuff. So
let me ask you this, Drew, because one of the things that we really want to kind of bring about is the reclaiming of arts, truth, beauty, and goodness, that is a very Christian idea and has its roots in Christianity. Mm-hmm. When you were going through this, when you were kind of understanding this about yourself, that you had this talent, this gift, I don't want to criticize the church in any way, but did you kind of feel like an outsider, or did you see the church as the place to express that, or getting more traction outside of the church? I mean, just where did we get off the rails with artistry within the church?
Yeah. That's a big question.
That's a big question, and it's loaded too.
It is. It's a big question. I would say when I was learning and growing and becoming a songwriter and a singer and artist, those things weren't on my mind. Mm. And what's so beautiful about the church is that in those formative years for me, I was in youth choir. Yeah. You were there too. You were a couple of rows down. Yeah. And it was wonderful. The choir director at the time knew that I had taken piano. Yeah. And he goes, "Hey, I want you to play bass. You can read the left hand, right? You can read the bass line." I was like, "Yeah." So he hands me a bass guitar that was from one of the ladies in our church that had a music store. Wow. And he said, and he wrote on a legal size sheet of paper, "Here's the notes for the first 5 frets." And he told me where the notes were, and then go, and so I started playing. Well, I played for the choir for, a little while. Right. That sent me on a journey for guitar and more different avenues to write and stuff. But as far as the deeper question, I mean, that's a huge question. I would say, first of all, art and beauty is originally from our Creator. Yeah. And so where we got off, Genesis 3 is where it got off, where we began to look for things for ourselves and make it about us instead of make it about His glory. Yeah. And I think, the more modern answer to that, I think, is there's so many categories. We've categorized, monetized things in such weird ways. Right. Daisy and I were talking about on the way up here, just Christian music industry versus secular music industry, and that God is not in one or not the other. Right. He is He is the God of all music. He is the God of all beauty. He is the God of all art. And in some ways, those expressions are neutral in how we bring our heart and what we want to say about things,
Right.
then turn them towards the glory of God or away from His glory.
Yeah. Something you said earlier, it was convicting to me, because I think for me personally, I can try to push emotion to the periphery, because we can oftentimes be scared of it. We can oftentimes be scared of being led astray by it. But one of the things you said about finding different chords that moved you in a certain way, and the recognition of that music just naturally, I mean, that's one of the graces of God embedded in music, is that it does this to you. And for us to, as Christians, to understand emotion is part of our holistic self, of who we are, and that we are to give expression to that. And so I wonder, at least for me personally, that can be where I've gone wrong in my thinking of emotion has no place or very little place in the Christian life, in the church world. And so I've missed out on so much. I've missed out on just expression in so many different ways. And so, Daisy, you grew up in this atmosphere, right? What was it like growing up in an artist home?
So, I mean, my mom works in radio, and he's, used to be in music for, what was it, 12 years or so? I don't know. But
A few more.
A long time.
A while. But, just growing up around that, like, we would play in his studio while he was, working on songs or something, and we'd make up little songs, little ditties for random everyday activities around the house. Just, little things like that. It was just always a part of my life, and I've always just been surrounded by it, so.
Okay, so, like, your experience with music would be parallel to my experience with sports. Sports was just always a part of our life, and whether we liked it or not, we were going to participate in it. At what point did you realize, and not a boastful or prideful thing, where you go, I could do this. I'm good at this. I could do this. I think I'm an artist. When has that ever dawned on you, where you go, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a part of music. Like, music has always been around me since I was little. But I think what you're talking about, like, where I realized, I guess, was probably around 3rd grade. I got a ukulele, so I started learning how to play ukulele and started writing stuff, like writing songs in 3rd grade. I'd actually play them for my 3rd grade class, and that's kind of when I realized that was kind of an interest of mine.
Yeah.
But I think realizing that I wanted to do that, I mean, in school they're always asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I don't know, maybe somewhere in middle school or even elementary, like, I knew that's something I loved and wanted to keep.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really just recently in the last several years that because that question is kind of like, that's who she is. And it wasn't a matter of, am I going to be? It's like, no, this is just who she is.
Right.
I think the question of what are you going to do with it is just in the last few years of what does this look like for a career or for a future kind of a thing. And then it gets a little more complicated, but it's just kind of who she's always been.
Right. And it's like fish understanding that they're wet.
That's exactly it.
That's it.
it.
So,
she sang pitch for the musicians out there. No kidding. You think I'm lying. She sang pitch at 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, she would kind of coo, and I would change the note of her coo by half step.
Wow.
And she began to match my pitch at 6 months old.
Yeah.
Both my kids did.
Yeah.
But
that's
anyway,
awesome.
yeah.
I got to tell you a quick story because my son's he likes to dabble as well. So he was a little kid. I don't know, maybe 6, 7 years old, and he was playing in the playroom, and I would just hit a note, and he would say, that's an A, that's an F, whatever. And I called Jack Daniels, and I said, Jack, what am I supposed, what's going on here? And he said, well, he's got perfect pitch or whatever. And he said, bang all the notes to try to disrupt his hearing, and then do it again. And so I did that, and I would hit a note, and he'd say that. And then I would hit 2 or 3 notes at the same time, and he would say, well, that's these notes, right?
Incredible.
And so I called Jack Daniels back again. I was like, Jack, can I make any money at this? He said, no, there's no money to be made there.
No positions on the circus there.
Yeah.
We can stick.
Yeah. So, I mean, so at Daisy's young age, you recognizing that and saying that's a gift. Was there any pressure on you as a father or to rush this or to nurture this in any way, or did you just let it happen?
Actually, it's the opposite. I recognized an exceeding gift in Daisy years and years ago, and it scares me to death. I say scares because it's not just, it scared me then, it scares me now.
Yeah.
Because I would rather for her heart and her life in discipleship be the main thing about who she is.
Yeah.
I would rather her identity be in Jesus alone than her in the fact that she's a good musician.
Yeah.
And so the temptation for some may be, let's rush this and see if we can make something happen.
Right.
Mine has been, let's slow this thing down
Yeah.
to make sure that she knows Jesus and knows how to make him known. And then, on the side or later, if it makes sense in a later time in her life for her to pursue this as a career, I want her to have that grounding. I think that's my responsibility as a godly father.
So that's really interesting, not letting the gift get out ahead of who she really is in Christ and the image.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times when that happens, it becomes a hollow gift. It becomes a very, or a corrupted one in that
Surface.
sense. And then you miss the fullness of that gift.
Yeah.
And so what a great word to all the parents out there listening and watching today. When you have a kid that has a talent in anything, the primary objective is discipleship and not performance or whatever else it may be.
I was going to tell you this. I mean, you know this already. Talent is not what the determining factor is for success in any talent-based career. Just because she is extremely gifted and extremely talented doesn't mean that she's going to be extreme success.
Right.
What's most important in her life is that she knows Jesus, and he makes things happen as he wants to and as he wills. And if he chooses for her to pursue this and that be something that she does for a living, praise God. But while she's on my watch, I have a job to do, and I'm not sure I'm doing the greatest job, but I want to do as good a job as I can.
Yeah. What a great conversation. There's going to be more of this next week. And so come back and visit us on Day by Day Expressions with Drew and Daisy Klein.